All right, let's dive right into this. We're going to unpack the incredibly unique structural relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, but we're going to do it through the lens of a really fascinating framework called geometric structure-driven theory. It essentially uses geometric principles to analyze power dynamics. We'll look at their alliance, why it was always going to collide, and what this whole framework says about their future.
You know, this one sentence from the analysis just perfectly nails their dynamic. It describes this violent, symbiotic coupling of two forces that are fundamentally different and, as we're about to see, totally incompatible in the long run. So, to really get why their alliance was just destined to break apart, we have to look at their core structures. According to this theory, they're basically mirror images of each other, locked in what you can only call a collision of opposing geometries.
And this table, wow, it just lays their incompatibility bare. Look at the huge contrast here. Trump is all intuition, with his logic axis described as, quote, destroyed. Musk, on the other hand, is operating at peak logic. For Trump, wealth is like a trophy, something static you win. For Musk, it's just fuel for his rockets, something to be burned. Even how they see themselves as a total mismatch. Trump needs that external adoration, while Musk is driven by his own internal mission. These aren't small differences. They create a fundamental conflict.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, if these guys are total opposites, why on earth did they team up in the first place? Well, the theory suggests it was a kind of strategic symbiosis. Each one had something the other desperately needed. Musk essentially became, get this, Trump's external CPU. He was the source of all the external logic, the complex system design, and the first principles thinking that Trump's intuitive structure just doesn't have. He provided the raw computational power needed to make radical changes in government, something Trump's own structure just wasn't built to do.
But, like any unstable system, this whole thing had a ticking clock, a built-in expiration date. The theory actually pinpoints January 2026 as the exact moment their structures would start to violently repel each other. This was always going to be an inevitable and messy decoupling.
And just look how fast it all falls apart. It's a rapid, cascading failure over a single month. It kicks off with administrative resistance hitting its peak. Then Musk's own brand and his finances go into a state of perfect opposition. By the 21st, there's a critical power failure. His authority in the government just collapses, forcing him to pivot and declare the mission a success, even as it's all crumbling around him.
So this number right here is absolutely crucial. 179.7 degrees. Now think back to geometry class. 180 degrees is perfect opposition. It means two forces completely cancel each other out. So what this means is that every single thing Musk did to build up his image as a civilizational rebuilder was at the same time directly destroying his own financial base. It was a completely self-destructive financial gamble.
And this chart illustrates the exact moment they split. As Trump's status stabilizes, solidifies, he locks in his political position. And in that exact same moment, Musk's status just plummets and completely collapses. He becomes what the theory calls the discarded sword of the reform, used and then tossed aside. Now, this political decoupling wasn't just some abstract idea. It had real, severe financial consequences. So the question is, who paid the price for all this disruption? And as you can probably guess, that bill was not shared equally. Musk was paying a heavy price. His wealth risk levels soared past 107, way higher than his actual wealth achievement. He was basically a financial shock absorber for the entire political shakeup, creating this massive structural deficit for himself. Yeah, the analysis puts it about as bluntly as you possibly can. He used his own treasury to pay for Trump's reforms. In other words, Trump got all the political rewards from the chaos, while Musk was the one left footing the entire bill, paying for the whole operation out of his own pocket.
So after the complete train wreck of January, what happens in February? Well, this is where Musk enters this really fascinating new phase, a kind of tactical retreat. The theory calls it the molting of Elon Musk. And this number tells the whole story. His new wealth risk level shoots up to 118.10. That is a sign of what's called liquidity exhaustion, just extreme financial pressure from the establishment pushing back. It suggests he's now, quote, extremely short of money, and that's the price he paid for his freedom from politics. But this wasn't a defeat. It was actually a brilliant strategic transformation, something known as the golden cicada sheds its shell. It's this ancient stratagem where you escape danger by leaving a decoy behind. For Musk, that decoy was his political skin, and he shed it to protect his true intellectual core.
He walked away from the political battlefield to refocus on his real source of power.
So by February, it's over. His connection to the Washington administrative system is completely severed. The theory calls this his social death in politics. It's a total annihilation of his political status.
But, and this is the really important part, while his political power is zero, his intellectual power, untouchable. Freed from all those political chains, his wisdom access stays at a peak of 97. He can now focus 100% of his energy back on his real missions, like SpaceX and XAI.
And that completes his transformation. He's no longer a political player trying to patch up an old system. He's back to being a pure and maybe even more powerful technological visionary. He's the technical prophet.
And that leaves us with the final, really provocative question that this theory poses. Trump won the power, Musk kept the intellect. But what happens when the storm runs out of fuel and the formula is held by a man on a financial island? The analysis suggests their story is far from over, leaving us all to wonder what happens when these two forces inevitably collide again.